Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are across the seven continents. My name is Juan. I'm the host of the Psych Life podcast. And today, after a long time, we have our good friend, Dr. William Bridge. How you doing, William?
I'm doing well, Juan. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm looking forward to catching up with you.
Yeah, man. Like we were talking about before we recorded live, this is going to be a little bit different than the previous podcasts that we've done, that they've been very clinical. But after our talk, we decided that, hey, before getting very clinical, maybe we can apply something to the masses that everybody can enjoy and maybe apply to your life, especially from two practicing professionals in the mental health field. How you been, man? How's everything going with
Everything's
with
everything's been really
Lincoln?
good, man. Yeah, Lincoln's amazing. He was just in here a couple of minutes ago, but he's back upstairs now, so he's probably passed out for the night. But everything's been good, man. Staying busy, staying active. Um, another new year. So that's, I think, when we were talking before, that's kind of why we came up with the idea, just kind of looking at the year ahead and a disciplined life, and the importance of habits and routines. So I'm interested to see your perspective on all these things.
What a terrible host I am, William. I'm sorry about that. I didn't tell the audience what our topic for today was, and the title of this podcast is Healthy Habits in an Unhealthy World. And William, in today's world, we talked about this a couple years ago, or a few years ago, actually, how social media was very big on the rise. And with social media came attention span shortage. And we see that in a lot of studies where people's attention span, especially in the youth, it's if we were to compare it to maybe the youth from 2 decades ago, it is significantly smaller. In some studies, it even shows that it's half um, as long, and it's shown actually in the research of math equations. Part of developing healthy habits starts from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep, and even during our REM sleep cycle. What are some healthy habits you practice in your life,
For
especially
sure.
as a especially with a person such as yourself with such a busy schedule, working in multiple settings in the hospital and in private practice?
Yeah, so definitely, Juan, I'm a big believer in, a powerful and efficient morning routine starts the evening before. So, just in a sense of, kind of preparing for your day, whether it's getting your workout clothes ready the night before, preparing what you're going to wear to the office or to the hospital, and then just having everything kind of laid out. I'm not sure about you, but there's, something about the hours from like 4 a.m. to 6:30 a.m. For me, that's when I get my best work done. That's when I'm the most efficient, most effective. And, I feel like it really sets the pace of the rest of the day. Within that time, I usually try to read for 30 minutes a day or so, in the morning, something unrelated to medicine, just self-development, or, a book on productivity, or a book on organization, whatever, is interesting to me at the time. And then I kind of use that to either transition into preparing what the day at the hospital is going to look like, or you know, um, getting in a little bit of cardio or exercise, which is also helps and stimulate the mind for the rest of the day. But I'm interested to hear about your morning routine. I know you wake up early and get after it as well.
Wow, William, you really beat me to it though. 4 a.m. That you're very dedicated. professional, and it shows with that time slot that of waking up. Uh, I like how you said powerful morning routine. I could, now that when you mention it like that, I do consider my morning routine very powerful because it sets the tone for the rest of my day. I may not wake up at 4 a.m., although that is very impressive. Maybe I should get on that Kobe Bryant level that you're on. I do wake up though at around 5 a.m. And when I wake up, before I actually get out of bed, I already have a few very short sentences that I say to myself immediately to kind of bring me into balance for the rest of the day for what's important for me. And one of the mantras or one of the small sentences I say is when I wake up is my responsibility is limitless. If I'm willing, I can respond to everything. And I say this to myself in the mornings because when we um, process things, it happens not only in how we see things, but it happens on a cellular level. And something as small as that can really change the dynamic of the day. So I try to do when I wake up, I try to share some positive morning scripts for myself to set the tone, and then I'll immediately make some coffee. And much like yourself, I'm very astonished that we both have very similar morning routines. While making my coffee and drinking my coffee, I do also do some reading on personal development and how I can
Nice.
apply certain structures to my life, and from that, use the bathroom like brushing my teeth and whatnot, and heading out the door, and having the clothes already prepared the night before as to what I'm gonna wear in the office, and also what I'm gonna wear to the gym, and everything is preset to go, so I can get a good start, like a leap forward in the morning. I'm tend to be in the gym by 6:30, 6:45, and by the time and I'm in the office probably by 8:15, 8:30, I'm already in the office. And on my day goes. If and that's tends to be how my morning routines go. I have found that when my morning routine that I have established changes in a way where it is not beneficial or conducive for productivity, such as waking up late or feeling a little bit lethargic in the morning, so I'm showing up to the gym late. I find myself that it did, I don't want to say destroys, but it does hinder my rhythm for the rest of the day. Have you but staying disciplined to my routine is what I have found the key to what I have found to be the successes that I've had. I'm not saying I'm Elon Musk successful or nothing, but the successes I feel internally for myself, the morning routine definitely is important. I think there was a Navy SEAL, I believe his name is Joko Willink, and any person who is successful in their career, most of the time you would find 9 out of 10 times their day starts when that alarm clock goes off. And to delay that alarm clock after we have already pre-established it the day before because we had a goal in mind can deter us for the rest of the day, because we're basically saying when we put that snooze button a few times on that alarm clock, we're basically saying, hey, the goals I set weren't that important. And maybe that's a little bit rigid in the discipline and in making a healthy habit, but I want to hear what you have to say regarding that, because I have been told that's a little rigid.
Yeah, I think I agree with so much of what you said. I would say that you know, it's so fascinating with reading because we constantly have like this internal dialogue with ourselves, that I'm a big believer in that, how you talk to yourself, that inner voice and that ongoing dialogue that you have in your mind all day. In my world, I kind of feel like reading allows me to kind of step away from that and just kind of get lost in the words on the pages, and it kind of helps to unlock different parts of what you think about things, just the way you and I could read the same page and it would mean one thing to you and another thing to me. And I think that's it's great to do that first thing in the morning, because there's only so many times throughout the day where you're coming off of a nice rest and your brain is fresh. So when you first wake up in the beginning of the morning, it's kind of like your brain is a sponge, and it's an optimal time for the best input. I think that it sounds like you have mantras or like positive affirmations that you say right when you get up in the morning. I think that's definitely a good habit for sure. Um, I would say the version of that I do one is I try to just give myself roughly 10 minutes at some point in the morning where I make an active effort to not think about anything, to literally, and when I was started out doing it, the mind, of course, wonders, or I got to remember to send that email. I got to remember to drop off the drive. So your mind's going to wonder. But if you can get pretty good at, like a 10-minute, like just clean slate, no thoughts, it's been really, really refreshing for me. But I see you mentioned about drinking the coffee. Two questions about that. How do you take your coffee, and are you a breakfast person?
So the coffee I take it black. I years
And
ago I
good
decided
answer.
years ago I decided that to 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 take it black because one, I wanted, and I'll just share it here, I wanted less calories with the half and half. It wasn't hitting my stomach correctly. And then the sugar, I avoid at all costs to not eat desserts or um uh little pieces of chocolate. Sometimes it's put in front of me for days and I'll end up grabbing a chocolate or a chocolate chip cookie, but it is very rare. And I try to limit my sugar consumption so my body can operate as a whole the most efficient it can. And as far as breakfast, I don't really eat breakfast. I eat twice a day, and I do this to establish a discipline for myself, a routine where I can follow daily. Now, if it goes off by an hour or two, or if I have to sacrifice a meal because things it became back to back in my response, then so be it. But for the most part, I eat twice a day, typically around 11 and then again around 6. Healthy meals, and I am working out one or two times a day. I mean, I try to do two times a day, but it's rare, but at least once for sure every day, Monday through Sunday. So I need to get some food in me. But I have found that when I eat at nighttime, a lot of people they want to wake up and they want to eat again. And breakfast, and the body needs some time to get going. It needs some time to really wake up. There's systems within the system, which is the body, and I try my best to keep it very, very functioning smoothly. Are you a
Yeah.
breakfast person
You
at
know,
4
I'm
a.m.?
I'm not either. I drink the black coffee as well. It sounds like a little bit of what you're referencing, and correct me if I'm wrong, on just like there's so many different names: time restricted eating, time restricted feeding, like where you have a window in your day, and it sounds like for you it's like 11 or 12 to 6. So it'd be like, in an 18-hour day, let's say you have a 6-hour, eating window, and then you're basically, fasting with, black coffee, tea, and water in between the times you start and end your eating window. So I found, I could say, so when I first started, reading, learning, hearing about the time restricted feeding, I felt like initially getting going with it, it was great. But I think I was, potentially overdoing it at one point where I was probably, not eating enough. I was doing like the 20 hours and then eating in a 4 hour window. And I felt like I lost like a lot of like lean mass, and it was like a little bit too much. So I, dialed that back. It's very similar to what you're saying. I usually don't eat before 11 a.m. and I try to be done with food by 6:30, 7 o'clock or so at night. Because really, truth be told, that's when I'm getting ready to go to sleep because try to get the 8 hours in, and I'm sure we'll talk more about sleep. But yeah, we have very similar schedules. I mean, especially we haven't really talked like this in maybe 3+ years, and seems like our schedules are pretty much aligned.
I it is unbelievable, to be honest with you. It is unbelievable. I can't believe it. And that's great. And it's very, it warms my heart to know that a person like yourself has that schedule and I'm aligned with it somehow. It warms my heart. It lets me know that I'm doing things in a manner where it's conducive for productivity, especially if a professional like you is on the same path, it seems like, or has the same very similar ritual. I was, and for any of the psych lifers out there, Dr. Bridge, William Bridge, and myself, we have a podcast out that we made a few years ago on the REM sleep cycle and the importance of sleep and what happens during sleep for ourselves in the brain, and some of the effects that happen when we don't sleep the 8 hours or enough sleep for ourselves in relation to physical activity. If you guys want to check that out, I think it's podcast episode number 9 on the Psych Life podcast series on Spotify or on YouTube for anybody out there listening. William, and and I have to be aware of the time because it seems like we can go on this for days, but you mentioned that you have 10 minutes in the morning that you dedicate to having a still mind, not thinking about anything. And I'm bringing this up because a lot of the training, and I consider myself, I'm always training, not only physically but mentally, spiritually, financially. I'm always training to be better. But in
Sure.
my training, especially I've learned from samurais, they have a phrase that says no mind. And in other words, having a still mind, being able to control the compulsions that come with the mind. Like you were mentioning earlier, you wake up and you immediately we already skipped the step of getting out of bed and doing the coffee. If we don't train our minds, it will start thinking about sending that email. It will start thinking about where we have to go, where we have to be, what time we have to do this. And to train the mind to be still is almost like a superpower because now the mind is working in our favor rather than us battling with it or letting us dictate how we move forward. The mind is a tool, kind of like a sharp knife, where we use it to cut a carrot. We also use it to put butter on a bread. It's a tool that we pick and use, but we can't use a knife as a hammer. And if we don't keep the mind still, we tend to start using the knife, which is the mind, in a way where it's not meant to be used. Is there a specific reason why you keep your mind? You dedicate that ritual of 10 minutes in the morning to having a still. Is it to control those compulsions, or is there another reason why you do this?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I first heard about it from, I know you had mentioned various like samurais and so forth. I had heard from it. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Naval Ravikant. He's like a modern day philosopher slash tech investor, and we're just like a really fascinating guy. But he talked about how so much of, it's like one of those things in social media or society where it's like meditation or manifesting that's become like a big like buzzword. People throw it around. I'm manifesting this, I meditate every day. But what has happened with that is that it gets overcomplicated, right? It's like, 3 minutes thinking of things that I'm grateful for. 3 minutes, I'm thinking of things that I want. It just gets so complicated, and before you know it, you're raking through your thoughts again. So his whole thing is just like, well, maybe try to shut down the engines for 10 minutes. And we live in this high frequency world, and so many interruptions and constant information and decisions coming in. I mean, we probably make 1,500 decisions a day sometimes. So just to answer your question, really, I find that like 10 minutes, give or take, what it does for me, Juan, is that when something catches you off guard, or there's something you want to say in a meeting, or some reaction you want to have, what it does is it kind of, for me, it's allowed me to kind of catch myself instead of like having that reflex type of response where you can kind of almost step outside of the situation, and take a look and say, well, maybe we can pivot it this way, or that should be said in private, not in the meeting. And it just really allows you to kind of navigate these fly by night moments that you weren't otherwise expecting.
That that is very cool, and I hope the audience grasps that the 10-minute sitting in silence, not thinking, is meditation in itself. It doesn't have to be fancy with fancy clothes, sitting on the floor, going like this. Although you
That's
can,
right.
there are, but just not thinking. And and many people in the West, they have trouble with this concept because we're always thinking in this high, fast-paced society. And to not think is to go against everything that we think we should be doing. But it actually helps us when situation arises that catches us off guard, to use your words. I appreciate that and you sharing that. So something else I wanted to bring up about, healthy habits in an unhealthy world. We got the morning routine down, and we fill our day with productivity. We start early, we get the ball rolling, and then we fill it with productivity, with things that we have to do, and we keep our mind sharp. And we, with the practices such as keeping our mind still in the morning or doing a little bit of reading. Do you ever find yourself in the day, um, William, where things maybe you had a certain expectation? That's always what it is, an expectation how the day goes. And this day is different. This day, there's a lot more challenges. Maybe for whatever reason, we're not responding right. What do you do to get yourself back centered to move forward for the rest of the day?
Yeah, I mean, so such a good question, and a lot of different ways that I feel like um, it could be answered. But I think in terms of preparing for such scenarios, I talk about it all the time, but it's so important, Juan, to do things that are difficult on your own. So like whether it's waking up early, or working out before 6 a.m., or taking that online course when you don't have that much time, just on your own accord, just challenging yourself to do really hard things. Because what happens, and whether that's lifting something heavy or maintaining a strict diet, when something blindsides you on a Thursday, and all of a sudden life gets really, really hard or complicated in the moment, um, you're used to doing hard things. So all of a sudden, this challenging situation is in front of you, but you know that doing hard things in the past has always been something that has led to progress and something that you know how to get through and pace yourself through. So, I think like the biggest way to get recentered, circling back to your question, would be, you know, be prepared for, you know, the unexpected, so to speak. So if you're used to doing challenging activities, you're quick to spring back, and it's part of the reason I think we said we should talk about, a disciplined life a little bit, because that's what's so important about your habits and your daily routines is that when things get off axis, you default to those things that are automated within you. And the best way to for me to kind of get re-centered on everything is, do what you can to get through the moment or the day, and never miss if you miss one day because of something hectic, like let's say you can't go to the gym because you got a phone call, or you had to go into to work, or you were called somewhere that you didn't plan on being. You need to make it a point to not miss the next morning. Never miss 2 days in a row. It's kind of like, I read a story that Jerry Seinfeld, when he was like coming up and writing jokes, he would just make it a point to write one joke every day and keep the stretch or the consecutive streak of days on the calendar. He would exit off, and he would never miss 2 days. So if he missed one, he would never let it roll into the next day. So I think, everybody needs some latitude, and you got to give yourself a break. Everybody needs a break, but I think, you got to plan on bouncing back the following morning, no matter how tumultuous the day becomes. But definitely, I want to know your take on it. How do you kind of recenter when things get off course?
So for the so what you're saying is, if it isn't making us uncomfortable, it's not helping us grow. And if it's not helping us grow, then we're being stagnant. And it is not in our human nature to be stagnant. If you look at where we've been gone over the last 4,000, 5,000 years, I think it's a little longer the caveman. I think it was actually 10,000 years ago. But till now, we as humans did not stay stagnant. We're always growing. And so if there's a situation that presents to ourselves that makes us uncomfortable, it forces us to grow. And for us, and me myself, I don't like running from things, although I do like to change my approach when it's necessary. If I get, for example, deployed to a school where I have to do a risk assessment for that day or whatever the case is, and the staff is unwelcoming, or they want to tell, they you walk in sometimes and people already want to tell you what's going on before you get to actually properly analyze the situation.
Yeah,
um
yeah, yeah,
you it you you have to, you can't just brush those people off and say you don't know what you're talking about. That's actually horrible. You have to respond, and I have to respond in a manner that's accordance to what everybody's involved, and in turn it will make me stronger for the next day. So things that are making me uncomfortable, I always remind myself that it's making me stronger for the next moment. But one thing that does keep me in line, William, for what happens during the day is my intention. If I do feel like I am very uncomfortable, for a moment I just remember why I'm doing something. I'm not doing it just to get a paycheck, although obviously a paycheck is a reflection of energy exchange. I'm exchanging my energy and value in doing something to get back something else. It's an energy exchange. It's a transaction of value. But I'm not doing it just for that. That may be that's a small part of the equation. I'm doing it because I want to do it, and I'm doing it with love and with care. And every single client that's in front of me, or every single assessment that's in front of me, I remind myself that I'm doing this for a specific reason, and I have a good intention in doing so. So when I frame it like that, it's just words, but to actually experience that internally is a whole nother different aspect, because I'm operating out of a sense of love and kindness in my heart for every client, and obviously knowledge, but the intention of doing it makes things so much easier. Have you ever found yourself, and maybe this was earlier on in your career, William, where you're doing something, but it's with the wrong intention? It's the wrong thing that you want. You're doing it for the wrong reasons. And because you're doing it for the wrong reasons, it makes things so much harder. Have you ever found yourself in that predicament?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I felt like, a lot of the times, like for example, in like residency training, you're working these 80 plus hour weeks or whatever. So there's so much of the time where you were just trying to get your notes done, so you can be like at sign out at 6 p.m., or rushing through rounds in the morning with the patient so you can organize your thoughts before you have to present to the attending. So it was like almost like being rushed for 5 years, and there was only so many times when you could really just step away and realize, this is a person, this is a patient with a story. They're not just some list of symptoms. So you have to kind of, when you have to see 10 people before 6 a.m. or whatever, you can only spend so much time. So I would try to challenge myself to, uh, I would call it like asking an unscripted question, like something that you didn't have to ask about symptoms, like where were they from, or which football team they like, or where did they grow up, something off the course of the medical questions. And what that did is that like balanced the whole interaction that much more, as opposed to, you know how's the chest pain, or how's the mood, how was your sleep, how's your appetite, like that's the whole like checklist approach. And you know I think just kind of relating to people on a human level is a quick way, kind of in our world, to rebalance the interaction, and instead of it just being a one-sided exchange like you referenced.
The last part, and we're running out of time, William. The last part was the importance of, and I feel like we can go on forever regarding this, but social relationships. And for everybody listening out there, William and I may have to do another one just on this topic alone, and the importance of social relationships, and the studies on journals that have come out on the effects of positive social relationships can have. But just to piggyback off the intention part and how that makes things so much easier for us, it's the intention to want to have good social relationships and have to put the ego aside in many factors. I mentioned about going to different schools and having to do risk assessments depending on the need that day or whatnot. And there's a lot of personalities to juggle. And when that happens, even though I may assess a situation a certain way, it doesn't give me a right to just blow somebody else off. And if we can maintain these relationships, and for the sake of the mission that we have when we wake up in the morning, which is, if you're a clinician, it's to help people. If you're an engineer, it's also to help people, because you have to construct things for the benefit of others. Um, it is very important for us to maintain positive social relationships. So, William, I we only have 2 minutes left on the Zoom. Do you want to share any last minute words? waking up early. And you and I, we're gonna have to do another one on social relationships and how we're social creatures. But we got the power of waking up early, establishing a routine, working out, having good intention behind doing things, that having time for a still mind to train our mind every day so we are the ones in power of controlling it moving forward. Reading, so it's an exercise for the brain and stimulated with electricity to start the day, and so we can go outside our paradigm. Anything else I'm missing, or anything last words that you would like to share?
You know, the one thing, I was just kind of gathering my thoughts and notes before we sat down. I'm not sure, one, if you're familiar with they're like fitness bands called Whoop that like track your sleep, that track your activity throughout the day. But the founder and CEO is like the fascinating guy, and I was watching him on a podcast, and he said something that really stuck with me, so I jotted it down to share with you and the audience, of course. And what he said was, high performance is exceptional output delivered consistently over time. And I just thought that was like so comprehensive to the disciplined approach and the importance of consistency with your routine day in and day out. So I wanted to share that with you. And I noticed myself thinking about it. There's days you don't want to wake up, or there's days you want that cupcake, or whatever the cookie is on the counter. But this helps remind you of the importance of consistency.
Thank you so much, William. And I hope the audience enjoys the podcast. I know I did enjoy sitting here with you today, and I appreciate you a lot, man.